Alright, so today's prediction video is going to be a very, very hypothetical one, very unscientific, because we haven't seen a situation like this in recent American history. The most recent, I guess, would be 1996. But a three-way presidential race, which hasn't happened since the 90s, between Joe Biden, Donald Trump, and Bernie Sanders. Now, what is the likelihood of this happening? 0.0001%. Bernie already suspended his campaign. He's done. He's threw his hat out. He's not in the race anymore. But let's just say in an alternate timeline or something like that, instead of dropping out of the race entirely, he drops out of the Democratic primary and mounts an independent run by himself. So we're going to look at the implications. I've already filled out the safe states for both candidates, the major candidates, Trump and Biden, and we're going to be going left to right to determine how these states are going to vote in this hypothetical. So first off, the states of Washington and Oregon are both going to go to Biden by a likely margin. Oregon in 2016 went to Hillary Clinton by a likely margin. She only won the state by 11 points. I think a Biden victory on a similar scale, maybe even 10. Only reason I say that is because Bernie might get a solid 5 or 6% of the vote in Oregon because voters think that the state is a safe blue state. They're going to vote for whoever they want because it's going to go blue no matter who the candidate is. And that's what would happen in Washington as well. Of course, Hillary's lead in Washington was a little bit bigger. This is almost a safe margin, but it still wasn't too great compared to Obama's leads in both of these states. The state of Nevada is going to go to Donald Trump by around 5 points in this scenario, so it's going to be a lean margin. Lean is anywhere from 2 to 7, on my scale at least. And if we look back at 2016 again, in the state of Nevada, Hillary only won the state by around 2.4 points. And keep in mind, Nevada has had a decent amount of the vote go to third parties, over 5%. I could see a large percentage, maybe 4 or 5% going to Bernie, but I think breaking for Bernie enough so that Trump wins the state. I think Trump is going to win the state of Nevada in 2020 very, very, very narrowly under normal circumstances. But in this case, I think he's going to win it by around 5 points. Now, keep in mind, it depends on the state how much of the vote Bernie takes away from Biden. I think in safer states, Bernie actually takes away more votes than in the swing states, because in the swing states, Democrats are going to have to decide, well, do I want to vote for Bernie as a protest vote and probably guarantee a Trump re-election, or do I want to vote for Joe Biden because vote blue no matter who, we have to get evil Drumpf out of office or something like that. So that's the mentality that goes into it. Most Democrats, their biggest issue isn't healthcare, it's getting Trump out of office if you go specifically into the polls. So now we go to the state of Arizona. I think Trump will win the state of Arizona by a likely margin in this case. If we look back at the results from 2016, Trump only won the state by around 4 points. A little less than that, actually. It got really close. But the average margin in Arizona is a likely margin, around 8 or 9 points in the presidential elections. But in 2018, Democrats won the popular vote in the statewide race, in the state house races, as well as in the Senate race, and I think maybe Secretary of State in the state of Arizona. So Democrats have made significant gains in the state. And Bernie he only lost the primary here by around 10 points. So I could see, again, even 3 or 4% of the Bernie protest vote over all the other third-party votes that are going to be cast during 2020 are going to make a huge difference here in the state. Colorado, I could see going to Donald Trump by a tilt margin. This wouldn't affect Cory Gardner at all. I think Cory Gardner would still lose to most likely John Hickenlooper by a lean or even a likely margin. I don't think it's going to be very close in Colorado. The only reason Trump would win in this scenario is because, again, I think there would be enough of the Bernie protest votes to knock Biden off the top in this very, very unlikely scenario. And if we go to New Mexico, I think Biden will still win New Mexico by a lean margin even in this case. And of course, the reason I say that is because New Mexico has a high amount of third-party votes even to begin with. Even back in 2012 and 2008, it's much higher than in other states. Gary Johnson, this was his home state. He got nearly 10% of the vote. I don't think Bernie would get that much, but he would definitely get a sizable amount of the vote coming out of New Mexico because of his popularity among Hispanics. And again, these Bernie voters are not necessarily Democratic voters that are just coming out. The typical Biden voters are already going to come out. These are probably people that are going to be staying home that would be staying home in under normal circumstances, but are coming out because Bernie is running as an independent. They want to cast it as sort of a protest vote. Again, in the Rust Belt, I think Trump would win Minnesota by a tilt margin. I think this doesn't change because Bernie was not that popular in Minnesota if you look at the primary in general. And this is a state, again, that I don't really think it makes a difference in, because this is a state that is a swing state. I think most Bernie voters are going to suck it up and vote for Biden anyway. But I think there's going to be just enough. I mean, this is my normal prediction. I think Minnesota, I switch from either going tilt red to tilt blue, but I think in this case it would be tilt red just barely. Nebraska second, we're going to put as lean Republican. Moving on to Wisconsin, I think all these Rust Belt states, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, are all going to be by a lean margin. I don't think Bernie Sanders is going to be a big factor in these states at all in this independent run, because the Democrats who are there know that Biden is the only viable candidate. They know Bernie Sanders is not going to win the presidency. This is just a protest vote. That's what Bernie Sanders is doing. He's trying to send a message to the Democratic establishment, let's just say in this hypothetical. So I see all these states going to Donald Trump by lean margins. I think Ohio will still go by a likely margin because Ohio is not a likely red state overall. It's more of a lean red state, because if we look at the midterms, Republicans only won those races by around 3 or 4 points, and Sherrod Brown, who was the incumbent Democratic senator, actually won by a decent margin in a state that has been trending more and more red. So I think definitely all of these states, including the state of Michigan, are all going to be leans for Donald Trump in this case. Otherwise, I would put all of these states probably in the tilt column. Michigan, maybe even tilt blue. It depends if Gretchen Whitmer is a big factor. I don't really know. We'd have to see polling on that. But, Biden hasn't picked a VP yet, and I might make a video about who his possible VP choices are and the pros and cons of those choices. But anyway, moving down south, Virginia, I still think would go to Joe Biden even in this scenario, probably by a lean margin, because Bernie Sanders is not at all popular in the state of Virginia among Democrats. If we look at the 2016 election results, Nova, which is up here in Northern Virginia, the Richmond area, and Hampton Roads are solidly Democratic areas. They're also solidly establishment Democratic areas. I didn't pull up the New York Times map, but if we look at the primary, Biden won nearly every county in Virginia. I think he only lost like one county or something like that. It was an insane number. And a lot of his support, what brought him over the top, were these counties here. Now, he won a landslide victory anyway. But I'm saying most of these Northern Virginia voters are not Sanders progressive voters. They're establishment, neoliberal, Democratic voters. Left socially, probably fiscally moderate or even fiscally conservative. So they're going to be coming out for Biden because, again, this is the swamp up here in Northern Virginia. This is the establishment of both parties that really live in this area, but they've been trending very, very Democratic due to demographics and, of course, the fact that these establishment and federal workers have been trending more for the Democratic Party. So this is going to be a lean Democratic state. If we move down to North Carolina, I think Trump's still going to carry that by a lean margin. Again, lean is anywhere from 2 to 7 points. I think it's going to be on the higher end just because of the third party factor. So again, we're going to give that to Trump by around 5 points, I think. Georgia's going to be likely Republican based on that as well. Again, even Bernie Sanders taking 2 or 3% of the vote can really, really change whether a state is safe, whether it's likely, whether it's lean. And I think Donald Trump was in a good position to win Georgia anyway by a high lean margin around 7, or even a likely margin by 8 points, although my projections always put it as lean just to be safe, because the polling on the RCP average, Trump's ahead in Georgia against Biden by 7.5 points, which is strange because in the polling aggregates for Texas, it's a lot weirder for RCP. I think Trump's only ahead by like 2 or something bizarre like that. I don't think that's going to stay. I don't think Texas is that much in play this early on. Florida is going to stay lean Republican. Bernie Sanders is not at all going to be a large factor there because he got killed in the primary in the state. He barely got a third of the vote, I think. And I don't think the Bernie protest vote is going to be really big in Florida, considering he lost by such a large margin. And again, this is a swing state. I think in a lot of swing states, most Bernie voters, even if they want to vote for Bernie as an independent, are going to vote for Biden because they'd rather have Biden win than Trump. Again, that's just a normie Bernie voter. I'm not talking about the politically active who probably would vote green or vote for Bernie because they want to stick it to the Democratic establishment. But again, we're talking overall here. So the states of New Jersey, Connecticut are going to go likely Democratic, and technically they already have gone likely Democratic. We just consider them safe. Donald Trump lost the state of Connecticut by 14 points, New Jersey by the same margin, effectively. Normally, these states are around that margin, but Trump actually did better than Romney if we look at the overall trends. New Jersey, on average, trended more to the right. Connecticut, almost the entire state, minus Fairfield County, trended more to the right. So I could see these states being a little bit closer, maybe Biden winning by 11 points here in Connecticut, maybe 12 in New Jersey or something like that. But he's still going to win. This is not going to be an absolute. I mean, it might be a blowout for Trump in this case, but it's not like Sanders is going to be picking up states. And that leads me to his home state of Vermont. Now, this is tough because Vermont is a heavily Democratic state. Trump lost it by 26 points. Obama won every county in 2008 in Vermont by a safe margin. So this is a state that is super, super progressive, super Democratic, and of course, Bernie Sanders' home state. So now, with the mentality going into the race that the biggest thing Democrats want to do overall as a whole party, including everyone, is to take out Donald Trump, I personally think that Joe Biden would win Vermont by a lean margin. Not a tilt, a lean margin. Now, this was tough because I didn't know if this was going to go tilt Bernie, but considering Trump was able to muster 30% of the vote the last time around, I don't think a lot of Trump voters are going to be jumping ship to Bernie Sanders or something like that. And I think overall, Biden will have enough of the vote, and it's going to be very close. It'll probably be each candidate will get somewhere in the 30s in the state. Maybe Trump loses, like maybe he gets 29% or something like that. But Biden is not going to win the state overwhelmingly at all. In fact, I'd say the second in place to Biden wouldn't be Trump, but it would be Bernie Sanders himself and then Donald Trump, because it is a super progressive state. It is Bernie Sanders' home state, etc. Now, a state where I do think the Bernie Sanders factor does play in is the state of New Hampshire. Vermont and New Hampshire kind of have like a twin state thing when it comes to politics. And also just in general, they are very similar states, but they also are somewhat different. However, I still think Trump is going to carry New Hampshire. I just think it'll be by a lean margin this time. I think there'll be enough Bernie Sanders support shifting away from Biden to give Trump a bigger lead there. And of course, that brings us to Maine. Maine's first is going... Oh, that's not what I meant to do. That's Maine's second. Maine's first is going to be safe blue no matter what. I still think... see, it's tough where to put Maine at large in this case, honestly. Because Maine's first might actually be likely in this scenario. And then if we... Maine's second would be safe, which would put Maine at large probably in the tilt Trump column, honestly. So this would probably be a really good scenario for Trump. This puts Trump at 337 electoral votes to Biden's just 201. A complete landslide. Bernie not taking any states. However, he significantly hurt Joe Biden in safe states and lean blue states as well. But overall, it doesn't change too much. The only states that Bernie really flips from like the average projections that I have are Maine, Minnesota, and Colorado, just because those states in general are going to be really, really close come 2020. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this unscientific hypothetical matchup between Trump, Biden, and Bernie Sanders. I'll probably be making more videos like this at some point, considering, again, we're just stuck at home. There's not really much to do. And, of course, in the world of politics, there's not a lot happening. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, and I hope to see you in the next one.